Prior to Regrow, I had been really into the data and AI space, and all of the different radical businesses that are stemming off of AI that continue to this day to disrupt foundational businesses. And then when you think about Regrow, disrupting the agriculture space, and then kind of learning more about the ag space in general from, the history of it, like the real innovation in the last 70 years has been, really a renaissance period in this area. And it's a little longer tail than like the AI spurt that we're seeing. But, combining AI with, honestly, what's been the innovation that's going on in agriculture, and then combining that with saving the planet, and making sure that we can, really, really have a much better footprint, and the technology can be used for good was very, very applicable to making the decision. So, many other reasons that I can kind of stem from in terms of like where Regrow sits in terms of the maturity in the market, the momentum in the space that I'm sure we can get into. But the more research I did and the layers in this area, it's more meaningful to disrupt this space than any other space that I can find out there. So, and I'm seeing it prove out on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like if someone asks me what are the two like major waves kind of running through like our generation right now, it's AI and it's climate.
Hmm.
And those two can work together. And if you know, double tap into climate, what is one of the biggest opportunities? It's ag. I mean, it's energy, it's ag. I mean, those are two of the biggest. So
Yep.
if you can do something and combine that there, I mean, I'm with you. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. Regrow is one of them. So what you mentioned some of the other interesting aspects in terms of like where the business is, where it sits in the category, that type of thing. Like how would you explain that to somebody maybe who's outside the industry? How would you explain Regrow, and then how would you say like this is where we're at kind of on our journey or whatever?
Yeah, so I think that I kind of alluded the innovation in the last 70 years or so, like, but we have gotten really, really efficient with feeding people, right? I mean, I think that the latest stat that I heard was 1950s, there was 2 billion people in the world, and now we're at 8 billion, right? And at 1950s, it was like half, like one in two people were actually fed, and the rest were not fed, I guess, for the better lack of a better way of saying it. And now we're from with the 8 billion, we're close to 95% in terms of, feeding the population. So the more we grow, the more efficiency we need. And then the more that damage that does the environment in the way we've been kind of doing practice on our agriculture practices. So the emission factor is being the main factor. So when I talk to folks about, regrow and what we're doing, we go from a AI, computer vision, satellite type of model and join that with a soil-based scientific model to really combine credibility in a science-based way on giving brands the tools on understanding exactly what's in their supply sheds. And if they don't know the data, we can supply it. We can clean the data they currently have and supply that with actual information to enact different practices they can do to save the environment. So all on the regenerative agriculture space, all on crop types. Could be different ways of going about that. But these brands in general have the intention to do things, right? But it's the action and the vehicle that they really need to get closer to the net zero goals. And so when I talk to folks that whether it's I'm recruiting them or talking to customers, customers kind of get it anyways. They're finally kind of realizing that there's a vehicle to get them from point A to point B. And then when I talk to candidates about, the fact that there's an awareness kind of play that already exists. It's the action and the execution. And so from a business standpoint, every customer that you bring on board is one step closer to really kind of reversing what we're putting out in the air. And how empowering is that for you as an individual to do that, and also do your job effectively? It's just, extra motivation to kind of point and connect the dots as to how you can affect the planet.
Yeah, that's cool. When you get a chance to talk with customers and you're having these conversations with these kind of enterprise level CPG brands and retail, where are they at? Like what's their pain point that they're trying to resolve? are they being reactive? Are they being proactive? Or is it an opportunity that they see and they want to get ahead? Like where, and maybe it's all of the above, but like where are they at when you're talking with them?
Mostly confused. I think that it's you go. I think when I first started, I was at an event, and I may have talked to you about this already, but it was like the you had folks on a panel, and they're like, "All right, well, I'm the expert in this space talking about this, but I really don't know anything about it, right? And I don't know where we should go. But I'm the best option that we have in terms of folks that we talk about it. So just it's mind-boggling to me that there's such a huge need for visionary whether it's technology companies or brands to kind of really lead the way into making this something that's a reality. And so I think there's a 5 to 10 brands in CPG, same thing in like retail, that are kind of leading the way in the initiative. And everywhere else, everyone is kind of looking at those folks to make the right choice and path, and then they're going to join. And so that's a huge opportunity. And even if the crossing the chasm example, like this is not necessarily the same thing as most markets are, where you can help these 5 brands move from point A to point B, and then you'll have a slew of others kind of following, and we're seeing that as well. So, it's not necessarily the leaders of this that are the bravest. It's the next batch of followers that really kind of take on that risk as well. But the value proposition is not necessarily data collection for some of these top brands because they have data. It's almost like data correction, and it's really kind of taking the existing data they have and really completing the sentence as to what they could do if they were to enact certain practices. And the other aspect of it is having being a key vehicle for these large procurement supply chains that have a ease of supplier management and understand what their the supply sheds are and how they can make better choices and be more efficient in the process as well. And so, that's that's a lot of that what we see in terms of a value proposition, and then getting to their net zero goals quicker. That's something that's not like necessarily a light switch for the people behind the scenes at Regrow, but way closer to that than the alternative out there.
Yeah. Do you do you meet some that say, "Hey, look, we're ahead of more ahead than most. We've got a playbook, and this is how you fit into our playbook, and we need you to help us with X, Y, and Z," or is it more often where they're like, "We still don't exactly know what to do, but we got this goal, and we're trying to figure out how to get there." And oh, you guys seem to have a playbook. What can you do for us? Which one is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it's kind of a analogy that's I have a map and I know where I need to go. I'm going from San Francisco to Chicago, but I don't know how to get there. I can't do it walking. If I do it walking, I won't get there in time, right? And then they look at Regrow as a vehicle to get them there faster. Whether that's going to be a plane or a train or an automobile, that depends on how much data they have and how quickly they can enact that. Uh, but that's part of the fun stuff is getting there. So they know kind of where they need to go, but they have no clue on the wagons they need to kind of circulate to get there. So that's kind of the odd thing. It's usually in sales, you're manufacturing like a critical event, and you're saying, okay, you have this need, but when do you need it by, and let's create that critical event for you. With this one, these companies publicly state their critical event, and they're bold in making these claims, and it's just that they have to show traction, real tangible traction of actually making movements to that goal.
Yeah. Well, even with what you're doing, I mean, you got to keep momentum up, and you got to show traction yourself with what you guys are trying to accomplish. If you think back of some things that you guys have were able to kind of accomplish so far with your time there, are there things that you're kind of proud of that you've been able to get past, and okay, now we're on to the next thing? Is there anything that looking backwards you're like, okay, we got past that one?
Um, I think that, predating me, I think we've been a scrappy startup that's really managed to partner with major brands like General Mills and Cargill and become an integral part of their strategy. And so, which is really, it sounds kind of cliche in a way, but like I've been in these meetings before. I've been in enterprise partnerships where it's multi-millions in terms of that engagement, but there's a level of you feel like you're a part of their strategy here as opposed to a vendor. And that's where I think it's, kudos to the regrow team in terms of just really being hyper vigilant on, not just like listening to the needs, but really partnering, challenging, being provocative and how we can get these companies closer to their goals, what they need to, and then really kind of be a sound strategy sounding board as to where we go next. And I've been involved in those conversations, and it feels like you're sitting belly up with peers and counterparts at the same company. And I've always strived to build those relationships with clients and customers. Um, but the fact that it's a reality here and you feel it is a great testament not only to the vision of like we feel like we're connected on not just making more money, but like making the planet better. You feel that in like a mission in all these conversations, pervasive, that everyone's motivated in the same thing.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you think that's a function of the goal that everybody's rallied around that has a specific date to it? Or is it just the nature of that's what survival of the business is going to be, is to work with these major partners and we got to be along with it? Is it both of those
Hmm.
things or?
There is a unified, movement of like at least the science community about coming together and solving the problem. So it's less about. So it came from like an open source type of modeling. Everyone's using the same models to kind of use, and now there's a little bit of privatizing that. We have one of those models that used to be open. Now it's private. And I think that's a good thing because it actually moves things forward. Sometimes when it's open, it just stays in the research community, and that's where it sits. So, but you still have that connectedness and less like sharky kind of competitive landscape where even if you see a competitor of regrow as an example, it's competitive, but we're all trying to win the race together. Hopefully we'll be first and you'll be second, but it's still like the same. Like you want them on the podium together, and so I feel like that's the type of feeling that you get in the room in general. That it's something that we're all kind of joined at. But there's also a who has time for that type of approach because there is so much to be done where there's kind of a ticking clock mentality. So if we release a feature in 8 months as opposed to 4 months, there is obviously business ramifications to that, but there's climate consequences to that as well. And so it kind of establishes a sense of urgency on top of urgency as well that exists. But I'm not saying it's not wrought with folks that are adjacent on the sidelines looking to capitalize on a lot of what's going on out there. I mean, there's still those folks there, but I think you partner with the folks that are pure of heart, if you will, and you're able to clear out that noise.
When you're talking with somebody who's a prospective partner here with this, are there hesitations that they have that they're just kind of unsure of that you're able to, that they're probably going to have, and you can kind of put those to rest? And in those conversations, when do you know, like, oh, they get it, like they understand what this can do, what problems it solves for them, how it gets them closer to their goal? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that they're hopeful in the conversation when they come into it. And I think that the space in general is like there's a lot of players in the space from a technology and satellite imagery side they're doing enough. But I guess it's just like, from the folks that we're talking to, it's, do you have that good marriage between science and technology? And science is not something, and technology really isn't either, but for the sake of this argument, science has more of a longer tail that you need research and you need kind of like studies, and you need people dedicated to this topic in general for quite some time. And so I think that explaining that kind of scientific method without kind of making people's eyes go cross-eyed to ensure that it's something that's based on credibility is really important to the folks that we talk to. In addition to the technology and the dashboards and the product itself, which make it easy for folks to kind of understand and see that they can actually put this in action. But I would say the most important thing that customers have, or prospects have in this case, when they come into the conversation is really questioning the science and the rigor behind that science, so they can trust the technology.
Yeah. What do you think? What does this do for individual growers? Like what is it, and what's in it for them? Like why should they be happy that this exists and it could be available to them?
Well, I think that for any kind of relationship these growers have with, their the brands that support, or the agribusiness that kind of funds the business in some ways, there's a lot of talk about carbon credits, and I think this is the second wave of that as well. And so there's a little bit of like burned once, or fool me once, it's my fault kind of thing. And so coming into it, and you're looking at generations of practices that are being changed, and change is always hard. But when you're talking about family legacies and deep rooted systems that have been in place for decades, and you're going to be the individual that's going to be either the hero or the villain, that's quite the choice. And so I think that trust is really important for growers, and not being kind of enamored with how much money you can make and all that kind of stuff. All that it helps to make sure you have a sustainable business for yourself to feed your family. But knowing that you're going in the right direction, and you're not going to be kind of led in a way that's going to make you the villain. And the villain in this case is, family legacy. It's different than just losing your job. This is more important to those folks. And so I think that having some sort of a recognition that they're being led in the right way, and the change is not only something that's just for good for the climate, but it also is safe and makes them more profitable in the process. Understanding that that is something that's not just talk; it's something that really can apply to them. So, yeah. So I think anything from a grower's perspective, it's skepticism at the beginning, because there's tons of salespeople trying to sell them a bag of goods that is more akin to snake oil than anything else.
Yeah. Have you found that there's certain aspects about regrow that really help that trust come across, like that the trust is there because of X, Y, and Z? They see it and they're like, oh, this is different.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think that we have a product it's just an MRV product, and it's basically helps growers enroll in certain practices, which a project developer kind of puts in place and funds the project itself. And in this is a nice, easy to use interface where farmers can enter what they're going to do, and at the end of their growing season, be able to apply a scorecard that Regrow gives them. And then that goes into an auditor, and then that auditor kind of gets the carbon credit from there. So being removed from that final process, I think, is really important to ensure that we have a more of a neutral ground on verifying what they did is correct, as opposed to being the judge and the jury, and making sure that there's checks and balances in place to get the best kind of outcome. I think that's really, really important, especially in the carbon markets, to have that kind of assurance that there's steps removed, and you can trust the platform to do what the platform is supposed to be doing. And then the other side of things, they can also be neutral in the fact that they're verifying what they need to. I think that's really, really crucial as we kind of move into these next few years, where I think carbon is going to be more scrutinized than it already has been, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's in some ways it's a little bit like simple accounting practices. Some people shouldn't be handling these checks and things like that, because even an honest person every once in a while, in a moment of weakness, might fudge something here and there, right? Like they may
just round that number up.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's smart. I think keeping the sort of separation there from the get-go makes a lot of sense. And should go a long way to helping with trust, and just saying, hey, there's no possible ways we can influence this type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you look forward, I mean, you guys have made a lot of progress right now, but there's still more you want to do. What do you see kind of on the horizon? What's the next kind of milestone that you're looking forward to, that you're thinking, man, that's going to be great when we can get to that point?
Well, we are primarily in crops and fertilizers as of right now in the U.S. I think that alone, expanding that, we're already expanding into Europe, several countries in Europe. We're expanding in Australia, we're expanding in Brazil, for not only crops but also grazing and protein data as well. But I think the real big thing is when we kind of unlock in the next coming months, water. And the conservation and the quality of water, and how that kind of impacts the soil, easily to kind of, well, I shouldn't say easy, I'm sure that's our internal team is going to roll my eyes at that comment, but it could be applicable to our model itself, but also the similar type of like exponential impact that we can have in the environment. I mean, obviously California has gone through a series of rainstorms that kind of helped the current drought status a little bit, but has by no means gotten us out of the water crisis that we have. And so, that's just like a double prong of like not only just affecting the soil and regenerative agriculture from that standpoint on crops, but how much further we can do with water. And then you can think of all the other agricultural systems that can follow as well that we can impact. But those kind of areas are the main focuses: geo expansion with our existing, and then new agricultural systems such as water and water quality in the existing geos.
It's cool. With regenerative ag, are there misconceptions that you run into from time to time that you would love to see go away or just explained or better understood?
I think from a regen standpoint, I think I haven't come across many uneducated folks on that front. I think that more of it comes from the carbon markets. That seems to be where the squishiness and the uncertainty and just the frank wrong ways about doing things. That's where the confusion kind of lies. And so it's that, and then like the other aspect of it is really understanding the offset market. These companies in general that maybe are not touching the agricultural world as it stands today, but want to figure out ways to offset their current carbon emissions. So that's an interesting one in general, on making sure that market is something that's really, are you making it net neutral are you continuing to do the practice that you're currently doing by polluting the environment because you're offsetting it over here, or are you doing both, right? Are you trying to kind of minimize the right while also funding the left? That's where I see most of the confusion lie.
Yeah. So for everyday consumers, a lot of people have no idea like what progress is being made. I mean, there's things that are being done that are kind of not clued in on, but you have a chance to talk with a lot of sustainability folks at major brands, right?
Mm.
As you talk with different brands who some are taking action, some maybe a little bit behind. In those conversations, are you encouraged by the progress where we're at today, or are you sort of discouraged by the lack of progress that other brands are? And man, those deadlines are going to come and go, and they won't have done it. Like, where on the glass half full or half empty? Like, where are you at on that right now?
Yeah, I mean, outside of the top ones that seem to be taking action, there is a lot of wait and see, and that's discouraging to the point where they're looking for some other, big brand to take the lead. And then they'll, don't worry, we'll be right behind you kind of mentality. And in something like climate, it feels like the reason why you're doing it is to take action, right? It's like, I'm going to run a marathon by June, right? But I'm going to wait for a running buddy to get me out of the couch. And it's just, do you really take that goal seriously, right? And that's the discouragement that I feel. So, and maybe that's just a lack of like where to go and how to take action that persona kind of needs some help with. And if that's the case, then hopefully that person will be engaged with having as many conversations about action as opposed to just awareness and talk. And that's where I think the regrow can help in general. But other brands that are doing the similar things, it's like anything that really encourages them to not just understand the abatement potential and the greenhouse gas emissions that they can kind of reduce, but actually doing something about it, because it really, like I said before, the clock is ticking.
Yeah. That is interesting to think about. I wonder if the leaders are leading because that's what they do. That, hey, we lead. We're going to take a lead on this, or do they feel like a responsibility? Like, a lot of eyes are going to be on us. We better do the right thing and get going versus lagging behind. I don't know, but maybe a little bit of both.
Maybe both. I think we've gotten to a point where the new buyers themselves, the younger generation is much smarter. I have an 11-year-old. I have two. 11-year-old is my oldest, but she's already being turned on about what brands and what is recyclable and what is compostable, and like those aspects of it. So you can just see that generation already coming up with this as like common knowledge. And so the new generation of buyers in their 20s and early 30s, they're being way more, there was more brand loyalty for consumer brands that are doing what they need to. And And I think that they're holding people accountable to do that, to include like not only just the buyers themselves and the brands, but like those folks that are going to work at a company. They're going to be focused on companies that are B Corp certified as like as table stakes. And so, I think that's a good thing. So that pressure comes from all angles on making sure there's relevancy of your company now and moving forward. And so if it just kind of comes down to business, which I think it always does, and whether or not your business exists for the next 20 years, I think it's really important to do the right thing. And and I think these brands have been feeling it from both angles, from a business standpoint, from a recruiting aspect and a attrition aspect, where they're being demanded to do the right thing at all angles.
Yeah, it could be they have better research and a better feel for where the audiences are going, and they want to get there first, right? I mean, that's purely business at that point.
Yeah, I agree.
That's cool. Yeah, my 14-year-old, every once in a while, she hears who I'm interviewing on these podcasts. She's like, "That's cool, Dad." Like, I'm like, "Oh, good. I'm glad you think that's cool too." So
that is cool. Yeah, as a side point, I've worked for my last company was also a B Corp certified company as well. But this was the first time that I heard. It was a conversation in the car. My 8-year-old and my 11-year-old were talking about what they want to be when they grow up, and my 11-year-old just literally said, "I want to work for Regrow," and I was like, "That's just like it might seem corny and whatnot, but I mean these moments really make make the motivation that much more impactful."
Absolutely, man. Like if you can't impress your kids with what you do, like what's the point? I mean, that's the good stuff. What you don't want them to say is, "I'm definitely not going to work there,"
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they've heard complaints and things like that. So
yeah, exactly.
100%. Well, on that note, what has been the most rewarding aspect of your time at Regrow so far?
It's been, we kind of alluded to the relationships with our customers. I think that's been really rewarding, being included in that strategy moving forward as not just say, "Hey, we're doing this," but it's a, "Hey, we're doing this. What do you think?" type of conversation. I think the leadership team is being formed, and so being a part of like growing the team. The go-to-market team is being grown as we speak, and so hiring folks that are frankly new to climate tech, that are very accomplished and joining for very similar reasons that I joined, but is getting a lot of exposure based on market conditions, and climate tech is growing, and so you know we're seeing a little bit of the counter cyclical impact of that, and so that's brought out a lot of attention, and folks that frankly we shouldn't be interviewing for jobs at a Series B company that are really interested in jumping into what we're doing and being a part of something special. And then just the culture of Regrow is being, we all need to be better at what we do, but I think that this fuels just the type of motivation that seems a little bit deeper than just hitting revenue goals for VCs that fund. It's I think it's that extra layer of humanity that exists at a company like Regrow that you don't see at other companies.
Yeah, and I think once you get a taste of it, it's hard to imagine doing anything without it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like we're all going to get like a scorecard of what we did in our careers. And so, if your scorecard is just a W-2, that's pretty empty, but what footprint are you leaving and what impact have you made for the folks that are right behind you?
Yeah. And did your kids want to work there someday?
Yeah, exactly.